Joining us now, former Attorney General Bill Barr. Welcome back to Fox News Sunday.
Thank you, Shannon.
Okay, a lot to unpack there. We don't know about this indictment on Tuesday. Fair to say you and the president have had a complicated relationship at times. Disagreement over whether you quit, whether he fired you, all of those things. But when it comes to this, you do seem to agree this is a political prosecution based on what we know.
Yeah, based on what we know, it certainly appears to be. And I think the American people see that. It's the very essence of the abuse of the prosecutive function, which is pursuing a person rather than pursuing a real crime.
So you know his critics, though, say that, okay, every American should be subjected to rule and order and justice. And this president, well, according to the New York Times editorial board, not surprisingly, they think he flirted with that. They say Donald Trump spent years as a candidate in office and out of office, ignoring democratic and legal norms and precedents, trying to bend the Justice Department and the judiciary to his whims and behaving as if rules didn't apply to him. And as the news of the indictment shows, they do. Okay, Piece in the Atlantic back in 2021 talked about your time at the DOJ and said that you were widely seen as a Trump lackey who politicized the Justice Department. So did you ever feel pressure to bend the law or to ignore it? And what do you make of, the president's critics saying this is all just catching up with him now?
Well, as I've said repeatedly, he never directly pressured me to do anything in a criminal case. Now, he's out there tweeting all the time, which made my life difficult. And he was calling for people's scalps. And, from what he said after I left, he was mad at me for not delivering scalps. But the idea that I was a toady was something fostered by the mainstream media. And which of his enemies were prosecuted? Who did I, use the criminal justice process against? And there's usually crickets, because there's not a case of that. But the other thing about this is I think the case, based again on what's being reported, the case lacks any legal basis. It's pursuing somebody there's nothing inherently wrong or illegal about making a hush payment. They're saying he falsified the corporate record. But for that to even be a misdemeanor, you have to be trying to defraud somebody. And it's unclear exactly who was defrauded. This is his own company. And then finally, and most importantly from the federal standpoint, the idea that this was a campaign finance violation is simply wrong. It's wrong on the law.
So he is facing other cases. We've got special counsel investigating the MarALago, the documents, January 6th lead up. As somebody who headed up the DOJ, are you confident they can be neutral? They will be in this case.
I hope they will be, and as I've said repeatedly, I think the document case is the most serious case. I don't think they went after those documents to get Trump. I think they actually wanted the documents back. And what's at issue in that case is not the taking of the documents, it's what he did after the government sought them and subpoenaed them and whether there was any obstruction. And I think that's the most serious one out there. And the other one, I think the January 6th one, is a difficult case to make, and it also runs into First Amendment issues, where you're going to draw the line between legitimate First Amendment activity, protesting an election, and actually conspiring to undo an election. So that's a difficult case to make, but I'm hopeful the department will approach it properly.
I'll ask you what I asked Jim Trusty as well. If the president was your client, would you put him on the stand? Because I got to imagine in any of these cases, if it gets to trial, he's going to want to defend himself.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm not his lawyer. Generally, I think it's a bad idea to go on the stand, and I think it's particularly a bad idea for Trump because he lacks all self-control, and it'd be very difficult to prepare him and keep him testifying in a prudent fashion.
Okay, let me ask you about this back and forth. Your legal opinion on the House GOP committee chairs. Several of them are going to Bragg's office saying, we want answers on this, that, or the other, how you're using funding. We want you to come testify. There's been a lot of back and forth. So Bragg's office fired back the latest volley in these letters. His general counsel on Friday saying this: President Trump has directed harsh invective against District Attorney Bragg and threatened on social media that his arrest of indictment in New York may unleash death and destruction. You and many of your colleagues have chosen to collaborate with Mr. Trump's effort to vilify and denigrate the integrity of elected state prosecutors and trial judges. Basically, the Bragg office is saying we're not cooperating with any of this stuff from the House committees. Would they have jurisdiction or any authority to call him in to answer these questions?
Well, that's going to be a constitutional issue, but it's actually Bragg, it seems to me, that's jumped into the federal arena. He's interfering in a federal election process, and his case is built on an alleged violation of federal law. He wouldn't be able to survive the statute of limitations and not be able to juice what is a misdemeanor into a felony without claiming that there's a violation of federal law. So he's the one that has essentially weighed into the federal arena. And the real danger of this thing over the long term isn't so much narrowed to Trump. It's that now we have thousands of DAs around the country. Now that the Rubicon has been crossed, any one of them can sort of find federal candidates or someone or federal office holders and so forth, can find some state law they want to pursue the person on and get themselves into the national political arena.
Well, you have served this country as AG more than once. You've seen a lot in your years happen in Washington and in this country. Does this feel like one of those moments that we have crossed a line that will make it kind of an historical marker about the before and after of these prosecutions?
Yeah, well, one would hope this would be nipped in the bud by people who have some judgment, but you know, I'm doubting that. So I do think that this is a watershed moment, and I don't think it's going to end up good for the country. Part of the problem, of course, is the corruption of the media, which has essentially contributed to the creation of a mob mentality in our country. Instead of being the restraint on mob thinking, they've essentially encouraged this kind of thing.
We try to be that here on Fox News Sunday.
Right.
Mr. Former Attorney General Bill Barr, thank you for your time. We appreciate it.
Thanks.
Subscribe to the Fox News YouTube channel to catch our nightly opens, stories that are changing the world and changing your life. From Tucker Carlson tonight.